308
Kia ora. Mate whakapono, mate tuma nako, mate titi ro, mate whakarongo, mate mahi tahi, mate mana wai nui, mate aroha, ka tae a e au. By believing and trusting, by having faith and hope, by looking and searching, by listening and hearing, by working and striving together, by patience and perseverance, by doing this with love and compassion, I can succeed. So good morning, Morena. Welcome to Inspirational Communities. Thank you for tuning in to RFM this morning on 92.7. I'm Geraldine from the Wairarapa Women's Centre, and every month I present this show to you, and it reaches the Wairarapa community and beyond. It's about our community involvement. So feel free to make requests if you're involved in the community and want to share the wonderful work you're doing. We're always after knowing about the wonderful initiatives and work from our region. So we want to hear from you. I always like to thank Michael Wilson and his team at RFM for their constant support and making sure I know what I'm doing with all the buttons here, because it can be a little bit daunting at times. And indeed, with pretty much every show, I have a slightly different request. So it's quite good to have them on board and helping me. So last month, I invited Lisa and Joe from Divine River, and I hope they're doing well this month. They started a workshop. We talked about period. Divine River organized educational workshops in schools and to educate young people about women's monthly cycles and tutor them to make their own reusable pads. So that's lovely initiatives. And they're currently running a workshop on a Saturday, every Saturday morning, so that's open to the public at Makura College. So if you've got the opportunity of going, I would really recommend. They're wonderful ladies, and they're really there about educating, not changing your mind necessarily about what you're doing with pads. So check out their Facebook page. And go and check it out. So today we have I have invited two wonderful ladies from the volunteering Wairarapa organization, and they're coming to talk to us about their organization. And this is Jill and Donna here with me today. Welcome, Jill. Welcome, Donna. Hello.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit about what you're all about. So do you want to tell me a bit about yourselves and what your involvement in the community, what you're doing, volunteering Wairarapa?
Great, thank you so much for inviting us. So my name is Jill Greathead, and a little bit about myself is that I'm 63 years old, so I'm nearing that retirement era, so to speak. I've had a really varied life. I spent 15 years in the UK, having been brought up in Greytown. So came back 25 years ago in order to potentially have a family, which did happen. So I have two sons, aged 25 and 20. I left New Zealand when I was 19 years old and went to America and travelled across America on Greyhound buses, all on my own. And I probably looked about 15, apparently. I looked like a child, I'm told, because the bus people only ever charged me for a child's fare, so I assumed that I didn't look very old. I went Freddie Laker in London, for those of you who are my generation, who remember those days, and obviously learned a truckload of stuff. And I guess when people say to me, why did you do that? And I guess for me, I'd been at university, Victoria University, and really kind of wasn't sure about what I wanted to do with my life. And I think, looking back, I wanted to figure out how the world ticked. And I think I've got a pretty good idea of that now. So I went to the UK. I got to London, and of course, for Kiwis in London at that time, which was the late 70s, the world was your oyster, and I was very quickly given an aptitude test by the Job Centre and guided into a COBOL programming course, which I did and passed, and got into working for City of Westminster, which is the richest council in the country, in the United Kingdom, and did COBOL became a programmer, then went on to Oxford because I didn't like living in London, worked at AC Nielsen's, which is a market research company. So I worked for these large organisations. After that, I decided to come back to New Zealand, and that's when I worked for Databank, which was a really interesting time. And then after that, after about 4 years, I then decided to go back to the UK with a boyfriend that I had who was from Yorkshire, and that's when I got into the PC industry, which was the most exciting part of my career at the age of about 25 at the stage, which was with Lotus Development, as in Lotus 123. Now, young people won't have heard of that, but my generation will have heard of that. It was the precursor of Microsoft products, Excel, and Word, and all of those things that we still use today. So unfortunately, Mr. Gates, as he is able to do, did a maybe not necessarily an ethical thing, but managed to push all the Lotus products out of all the corporates and offer his platform, which was Microsoft Office, which wasn't that great at the time, for free for a few years. So, of course, that's how he did it. So that's that little bit of history. After 4 years at Lotus, which was absolutely stunning, I went to America, I went all around Europe. I did, presentations for massive audiences. It was quite incredible. They used to call me the Kiwi, which you might not think is particularly original, but in those days I was the only Kiwi working for Lotus. And so it was a fascinating time. I look back and it was kind of exceptionally exhausting. We were basically on planes and hotels, continuing to learn the new innovation the whole time. So I decided at that point that I'd leave, and once you had that kind of experience under your belt, then the consultancy was the way to go. So at 28 I started my own business called NZPC Services, which in fact I closed down last year as a limited liability company, but in actual fact I'm now sort of going to be trading as a sole trader, a whole lot easier, no GST, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I've pretty much been my own boss really for most of my life. So that's kind of my commercial background, but I do think it's probably worthwhile discussing that or letting you know that, because that's kind of what's formed me as a person. So I guess I've also got a real interest in a sense, spirituality in lots of ways. The reason I actually think I went to UK in the first place was I wanted to visit a village in Scotland called Findhorn. So many people may remember or may know that. Now they're online, they're doing some fantastic things. But when I went, it was very, very small, and most people thought you were a real weirdo if you went there. But it was an amazing experience. And interestingly enough, I remember going there. My friends were much older than me, because I was only 20 when I went. A kind of a guy who was German, he was in his 30s, and he was a dentist, and a lady who was working for the European Parliament. So that was amazing, because I then visited them in Europe, and that started a whole lot of other stuff as well. So yeah, that's probably about me. And I guess what I've been doing for the last 25 years being back in New Zealand is I had my children and decided I wanted to be pretty much a full-time mum, which was awesome, and I was very privileged to be able to do that. So I spent 10 years at Play Centre, and I understand, Geraldine, that you are doing Play Centre, so that was amazing and taught me a lot about life, because I thought I knew everything, obviously coming out of the corporate environment like those people do, but they don't. And then I guess I just puddled along and did a whole lot of things. Joined Carlton District Council 20 years ago as a councillor. I'm still on there today. Yeah, and my kids are now left home, and yeah, everything is pretty cool.
And I can see you've obviously got more community work under your belt. You're wearing the T-shirt for the Wairarapa Garden Tour today, so was that a successful weekend?
Absolutely, it was successful. I put it on because I thought I'll be very sustainable, and I won't put it in the laundry basket yet. I'll have a few more days of wear out of it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was amazing. Donna sent out an email to about 500 people, which was great as a volunteer. So I decided I'd do it. I've done it before many times, off and on, and it's actually really relaxing, because I was the person who sat at a seat all day, or the half day, the 4 hours or 3.5 in my case, and tick people off, and it was easy.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Are you involved in any? Obviously, you were involved with the Wairarapa volunteering, but are you involved with any other community work as well?
Yeah, so as my role in council, quite a bit. I'm a sort of a representative for a lot of other organisations. Mangatariri Restoration Society is probably one of my favourites, and still there after 10 years. It's 10 years now, and that's progressed to becoming a project team and working with Greater Wellington Regional Council. So that was that. Probably should have a list. I can't remember everything I do.
Okay.
Wairarapa Safer Community Trust, I'm on their board, which is interesting, having a meeting there tomorrow. So what else am I doing? Donna, I look at Donna. Seems to be, I don't put it this way, I don't need any more right now. Really.
You've got your hands full.
Yes, I've dabbled in a lot of things over the years, but I have got it all on my LinkedIn profile. I thought one day I'll sit down, I think it was the last lockdown, I thought, let's just put it all on that, and then I don't have to think about it again, and people can sort of see where I've dabbled in the past.
So if people want to know more about you, they can check out
and
your
when you
LinkedIn.
get to sort of old age, as in 63 or older age, which is a wonderful state to be in, by the way, I think now, it's important to kind of let people know what you have, because you have got a lot of experience and you can actually mentor and offer that experience to people coming through, which is really good. Yeah.
Great. So you're about passing on your skills, which
absolutely.
is fantastic.
Which is why I'm at the volunteer centre.
Yes.
With Donna.
So what about you, Donna? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm relatively new to the Wairarapa. I was born in Upper Hutt in Pinehaven. Well, I was born in Upper Hutt in the Elderslie Nursing Home, which was a maternity home at that point. But I grew up in Pinehaven, and then we took a very long circle sort of to get to here in the Wairarapa. Family moved around to Australia, Canada, the UK, up in Auckland as well. But I've been here for about probably 4 years now. It's sort of hard to believe it's been 4 years already, but there you go.
Yeah.
So my background is sort of quite varied. I was in school to be a vet at one point, but that didn't work out, and I've done various odd jobs, and I came in to the volunteer centre at the start of 2018, it would have been, because I wasn't really doing anything with myself, and my mother actually had heard about it from a friend of hers at the Cancer Society, and suggested I might come in and find something useful to occupy my time with. So I met Jill, who was at that time quite busy organising after she'd just come into the role earlier in the year in 2017, and she was a bit overwhelmed with the workload at that point in time. But we met up. I got a volunteering role in the community centre. We're based in the Wairarapa Community Centre on Perry Street, and I was volunteering at their front desk. And a couple of months later, I came to Jill and said, "Hey, is there anything else I can do? I'm quite good with technical systems and things like that," and so I got recruited to be one of our volunteer facilitators. Who, at that time, we had a team of volunteers interviewing the new volunteers and putting them in the system and recommending roles for them. So that's how I got on board with that. And then in the early 2018, we'd started a project which came to be called the Joseph Malochney Young Volunteer Collaboration, which was about youth and volunteering and getting older people, mentoring them to start volunteering and gain some confidence and skills. And I was co-opted as the admin person for that with some funding from WINS, the project and the community funding. And I have since become just a regular employee there. So that's how I came to volunteering Wairarapa. So yeah,
fantastic. Are you involved in any other community work, or?
I haven't really been involved in too much community work. I do go to Toastmasters and stuff like that. That's not really community work, but Jill put me onto that, so that's definitely been helpful in developing my off-the-cuff public speaking type abilities.
Yes.
As I know, previous to Toastmasters, I couldn't be here doing this. I would freak out at that.
Yes.
I've been quite a quiet couple of years for me. personal circumstances and such. I've just sort of been doing what's ahead in front of me. I haven't been taking on more responsibilities. That's sort of something to look into in the future, I think.
Yes. Well, good on you for coming today. It is, I mean, I remember my first show here. I was like super, super nervous. And I've joined Toastmasters with you guys. So I do find it really useful, even if after a couple of sessions, and I haven't, gone out there and done the speeches yet, but I find it really an inspiring place. So, that's good that you're doing that too. So just before we go on our music break, when you're not working, what are your things that you tend to do to relax?
Shall I start first, Donna?
Sure.
Okay, so I've actually had to write this down because again you think, what do I do? So, during the week, most weeks I swim. I try to get 2 or 3 swims in the Carterton indoor pool. You've got to watch out when you go because it's not always available because there's classes and training going on. But I tend to try about 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's probably a good time to go. Swimming is probably my preferred exercise in terms because it's just so lovely and free being in the water, which is good. I also have 2 horses. One horse I don't ride because he's 23 and quite lame, but he's a lovely horse. And the other one, which may not be mine for too long, just depends. He's an ex-race horse and he's come out of Hong Kong. So there's a wonderful commitment from Hong Kong to all New Zealand horses have to be returned to New Zealand, and then they are rehomed. And I've got Oscar Magic. He did very well in Brisbane for a couple of years, apparently as a racer, went to Hong Kong, and I think he flunked big time. But of course they live in apartment blocks in Hong Kong, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, his favourite thing is rolling around in mud, which makes it very difficult to care for him. Anyway, we're taking it really slowly because, of course, those horses aren't really taught to do English riding. All they are taught is to gallop at high speeds. That's what they are there to do. But we're slowly getting used to him, and I'll make a decision probably by the end of summer as to whether I'll hang on to him, because at my age, you really don't want to come off a horse, and there's certainly risk of coming off Oscar, but we'll see how we go. So that's what I love doing, and you will notice with horse riding, because it's so risky, I guess, and quite exciting, and you're with an animal, you never know quite what they're going to do, especially ex-race horses and thoroughbreds, then you think of nothing else in your life but being on that horse and making sure that you stay on and you enjoy the ride, etc. So that's good. I also go to Toastmasters with Donna and yourself, of course, and I've been there for almost 20 years because I went when my youngest, who's currently 20, was 3 months old.
Wow.
So
that
was great, and I've thoroughly enjoyed Toastmasters, which is good. And the other thing I do and have done for many years and did as a child is tap and jazz.
Oh, wow.
So I do tap and jazz at Jackie Murray's in Carterton. I'm not particularly good at it. And we have a cabaret Friday and Saturday, and I still don't know the steps, but I imagine by the time the cabaret comes, I'll have learnt them. So that's what I do, pretty much, out there when I'm sort of not doing stuff to relax. A lot of people say, well, maybe you should just have something really, do meditation or something like that. But I find swimming very meditative. So
even being on the horse where you can't think about anything else than the horse and yourself is actually a great way to escape any thoughts.
Yes,
really.
and I've got a good tip for swimming because I do maybe 3/4 of an hour, obviously. And what I do is I have a little box of stones, and I do so many lengths. So I do usually around about 40 lengths.
Wow.
So so every time I've got 20 stones, and that's every time I do a length, then I put the stone in the thing at the other end, and then I don't have to think about time. I don't have to think of number of lengths. That's what I do
idea.
All the time. Yeah.
Excellent idea.
So that's a little tip for swimming.
Yeah. What about you, Donna?
I'm slightly less high energy. I do try and get out for a walk to help me relax, but I'm more of I do a lot of like fibercraft knitting and spinning and things like you're saying, meditative type of things. I find spinning to be quite meditative because you just sort of you get the rhythm up with your foot, and you're just concentrating on the yarn, and it's something to focus on while also not focusing your higher brain power, and it's very relaxing. But I also do a lot of knitting, and I've fiddled around with various things in that area, like I've dyed wool, I've
done some weaving. I do crochet as well.
You should come to one of our workshops.
Oh, yeah.
I think we run the workshops for knitting on a Wednesday afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And crochet, I think they do on a Thursday. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm knitting a sweater at the moment, and then probably another sweater. I've got so many random things sitting in my room that I haven't quite finished. But yeah, I'm always searching out sort of more complicated patterns. That's also sort of something to do with your hands, and you can sort of focus on it, and you just go through the movements. And
meditating,
I find it relaxing, and then at the end of it, you get something out of it, like a shawl or a sweater or something. So that's also a good thing.
True.
Yep.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Yep. Well, shall we have a music break, and we'll start again after.
Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned round the sun that is the source of all its power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy we call the Milky Way. Now the galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100 million light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 30,000 light years thick, but by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 billion years. And our galaxy is only one of millions and billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned round the sun that is the source of all its power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy we call the Milky Way. The universe itself is expanding and expanding. In every direction it can whiz, 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 as fast as it can go. The speed of light, you know, 12,000 miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely was your birth. And pray there is intelligent life somewhere up above, for there isn't any down here on earth. Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned round the sun that is the source of all its power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy we call the Milky Way. In an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy we call the Milky Way.
Right, so that was Pauline Harter with the Galaxy Song. So that's one you brought along today. So do you want to tell me why you chose this
just real
particular
briefly.
song?
So I was looking all through my CDs, which, to be honest with you, I don't use a lot these days because, of course, we're all online now.
That's right.
But my children were educated with Pauline at Montessori, both preschool and in the primary down in Carterton. So I was really impressed with Montessori education, which was, I think, did them both exceptionally well, or did them good. And I guess the Galaxy Song I always liked because I thought it was a wonderful way of actually kids learning about things. And I know that space, from my perspective, when I was a kid, was kind of a bit boring because it was just too complicated, whereas obviously a song makes it so much easier, and the kids used to sing it, which was lovely.
Yes, that's true.
My
My children are Montessori as well, believe it. So yeah, and the amount of things they learn through Pauline's songs is amazing.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a great way to learn singing, definitely.
Yes. So I would thoroughly recommend Montessori education to anyone.
Yes. Okay, so tell us about what you're here for, is to tell us about volunteering Wairarapa.
Sure.
So,
Well, I thought that I would just start briefly giving you a little bit more of the background, and then obviously Donna can continue. So I guess Volunteering Wairarapa was formed under the community centre auspices in around about 2015, and the first
14
person
actually.
I was at 14. There you go, 2014, and Jo Dean, who is currently Wairarapa's waste minimisation officer or zero waste officer. She was the first person who started it up. So that got started up. She then left. I think somebody else took over, and then they decided that they would form their own, or under their own, so step out of the community centre banner and actually become an incorporated society themselves. And that happened in July 2017. So at that point in time, they looked for somebody to run it, and I got the job to do that in September 2017. So that's a little bit of the history of it. I met Donna a few months later, and Donna gave you a little bit of background. I guess my role, I felt, was to get the systems working. Being in IT all my life, that's kind of important to me, that everything's organised and sorted and at one's fingertips, so to speak. So I got that, and I guess to ask you, what is the purpose of Volunteering Wairarapa? The mission is to make volunteering easy in the Wairarapa, and I guess that is a phone call. Someone says, look, I'd like to volunteer, what can I do? And so we went through bringing them in, having a volunteer chat, taking them through the system, showing them the roles that are currently available, and signing them up with an organisation. So we're a bit like a recruitment company, as in business, but we're kind of a volunteering centre where someone wants to volunteer, and then you have an organisation that needs volunteers, and we can actually match them up.
bring them together.
Yeah.
And I did look at your website, and it's easy to navigate. So that was the idea in the first place, wasn't it? So
absolutely.
yeah, great.
Yeah. So that tells you, I think, that tells you a little bit about the basics of it. So
yeah, maybe Donna, you can tell us about the services you offer in the Wairarapa at the moment. Is there any particular vacancies? How many people? How many people you've got?
Yeah, well, we have about 500 odd volunteers who are part of our contact base. Some of them are just happy where they are. Some of them are interested in more roles, but we're always happy to have more people come in. Obviously, if you're interested in volunteering, feel free to get in touch with us. What was I saying? So we're just offering our referral service. We help out if people need volunteers for events. Obviously, we helped out with the garden tour. Jill said we sent out an email. We find sending out an email to the database is the best way to do it.
Yes.
For things like that. Obviously, the last couple of years, events have been a bit uncertain.
Yeah.
Everything's been a bit uncertain, so slow business sometimes. But
amazing, the Wairarapa garden tour actually
went ahead.
Went ahead, and we were all on the bit like looking
I
out.
said
Is it gonna go
Is
ahead?
it going to happen? We're going to lock down. It was outside in garden, so that helps definitely. But we sort of are offering the basics, but hopefully.
So you mentioned about people getting in touch with you by phone. Is that the best way to get in touch? Is there what's the best way for people if people interested are listening now? How do they get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with us by phone. Our phone number, we've got a mobile number 0210 903 8868, or the office phone is 06 929 0960.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Or they can email us at admin@volwairarapa.org.nz. And we also have the website, as you mentioned, which is volwairarapa.org.nz, and that's got all our active roles up on it. And it also has our contact details on that page as well. So if you want to come have a look at what we've got available, and if you get in touch, we will be in touch and
Have
make
you
it
got
time for
any?
you to-
Have you got any particular organisation that are looking for volunteer at the moment that you might want to talk about as well now? Or any
It's been
particular?
relatively quiet recently. People are quite quiet. I think a lot of people are sort of worried about vaccines and what they can request of volunteers and
Right.
things like that. So we haven't had anybody knocking down our doors for volunteers.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to be a treasurer, there's always opportunities for treasurers to
Yes.
take care of people's financials. So
Yeah. We've had that issue at the Wairarapa Women's Centre
Yes,
actually, where
yes.
we've been looking for a treasurer. I think we've got one now, but
Oh, that's
yes,
good.
definitely treasurers out there. Anybody who wants to get involved in NGOs, then it's
yes, if you want to have the thankless task of financial
Yeah.
compliance.
But I did see you've got some roles with digital seniors. Seem
Yes,
to be
digital
looking.
seniors. They're always looking for people to help out with their workshops. So they're an organisation, for those who don't know, who they run clinics for older people to come in and get help with their digital devices, their phones, their iPads and computers, doing emails, things like that. So they run clinics. I know they run them in the library in Masterton, and there's a couple in rest homes, I think in Carter Court, and one of the rest homes in Masterton as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a couple of hours a week just helping out with technology, if that interests anybody.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
Using your phones.
Yeah, well, anything like that. Yeah, helping the older generation.
Yeah. Brilliant. So maybe we should take another music break. Another CD you brought. Do you want to tell us? So we're going to listen to Dire Straits, track 12.
Yeah, which is Brothers in Arms. I guess the reason I picked it when I went through my CDs was I loved Dire Straits.
Oh, yes.
When I was probably around about my early 20s, I think it might have been, I saw Dire Straits actually in Oxford, at Oxford Poly, and I think that would have been about 1978 or 9, something like that. That was before they were really well known, but I remember going with some friends because I used to live in Oxford, and I just thought, oh wow, these guys are amazing. So from then on I followed them, and then I think a couple of years later I came back to New Zealand and I went to see them in the the big athletic park in Wellington, which is now houses, I think, and I loved their music and I loved the guys, and I liked the name Mark. So I don't say I named my son Mark after Mark Knopfler, but I liked the name Mark. So there you go. And I liked him.
I love Dire Straits, and
Yeah.
they're brilliant. So let's listen to it.
These mist-covered mountains are a home now for me, but my home is the lowlands, and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms. Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle raged high, and God lifted her peaceful back in the fear and the long
returns like voices on the wind.
my brothers and
Gone to lock
there's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different ones. Now the sun's gone to hell, and the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the stars. In every line in your palm, we're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
Right. That was Dire Straits. So going back to volunteering Wairarapa, Donna, what would you say is your typical day in the office now? What does it look like?
Well, I'm in our office at the community centre 9 till 3 on, not 9 till 3, 11 till 3 weekdays, every day. And what is a typical day? Well, I mean, there's the day-to-day stuff, monitoring emails, answering phones, things like that. And then you just sort of have to take care of what needs taking care of because there's only the two of us doing everything. So I know recently I've taken on the financials, as our treasurer has retired and she did a lot of the wages and the monthly accounts and things like that. So I've taken over that. So at the start of the month I'm busy trying to figure out PAYE and tax payments and things like that. So that's a new opportunity to learn, let's say. And at certain times of the year, obviously, there's plenty of workload with applying for grants and filing the returns, the annual returns, and getting everything ready for the review. There is quite a lot of compliance stuff, which is certainly takes up a lot of time when there's only a couple of employees in the office. And yeah, it does get a bit ridiculous sometimes, but
so a lot of admin for you.
There is. I do most of the admin type stuff.
She does all the admin.
Yeah. Jill helps out with the fancy words for the funding requests and things like that. You know, just to make you do. But sometimes I'm a bit curt. I feel, but need somebody a bit more effusive to talk about the wonderful things we do. But so I do most of the admin stuff. Jill's more of the getting out advocacy stuff. And then it's like looking into things that Jill has suggested or that I've seen coming around, keeping up with what other volunteer centres are doing and other organisations are doing, and meeting new volunteers as it comes up.
You just made me think of because you just said you like Donna to use the words, but actually I'm sure at the first Toastmasters I came, you did the grammarian.
Oh, yes.
It was the jubilant?
Jubilant. I remember that, yeah.
Jubilant. And that's a wonderful word. You might want to tell the audience what jubilant means. I didn't know.
Jubilant, it's like happy, particularly happy and full of overflowing with positiveness and that something like that. Yeah, I do use quite a lot of, well, sometimes I use big words, sometimes I don't use big words. The childhood spent reading all sorts of things.
So is the secret of grants to have lots of jubilant words?
You gotta be positive, and you gotta read what they want, and then sort of make it really obvious that this is what we are doing, and it fits perfectly with what you want.
With their purpose.
Yeah, it is easy when you're a volunteer centre, because volunteering is generally well regarded. You don't have to explain it so much as to why
you're doing
it's a valuable service, but yeah, you got to make sure, try and sell them on what you're doing.
I have to say, I've started the grants. It's a new experience for me, and I love writing. I love writing and actually finding the ideas and writing it as beautifully as I can. So
yeah, lots of skill.
Thank you. And what about your stories at the volunteering centre, Wairarapa? What would you say are your success stories?
Okay, well, I'll sort of start on that one. I think that when I look back, I believe that probably we've got two major successes, and that was the way we dealt with youth back in, I think Donna mentioned it before, we called it the Joseph Mallockney Volunteer Collaboration Project, and that was to try and get buddy youth with older people. Now, we didn't do a lot of it, but I think it did sort of highlight quite a bit. And there were a number of youth, a good dozen or so, that couldn't get work at all, could they? And it was kind of difficult. It was hard to get them volunteering because they had no work previously, and they had largely been on benefits. That's maybe not such an area that we're finding now, is it really? Because there's a lot more help out there with an organisation called Yeti, which then became Youth to Work. So that was great, and I guess the reason we called it Joseph was unfortunately Joseph actually died in April 2019, and he was the one that loved all these youth. He had an ex-army, ex-military background, and he knew them all off pat. He used to go out with them. It was quite an amazing story. And so and the two things one thing that I learned from Joseph with two words were, you've got to be tolerant and non-judgmental. They were his two words that he used with youth. That was really successful, and I still see some of those guys on the street today, and we always have a little chat about how things are going. Some of them are now in work, so that's all good, or whatever. So that was good. That was a really good good project that we did. And I guess the other success was in that year 2018 to 2019. Our systems were so, I feel, organised that in actual fact we had over 300 new volunteers. We must look at the actual number of that, but that's quite a few new volunteers. And if you looked at any of the volunteer statistics over New Zealand, that was massive. But we were doing catch up. Definitely doing catch up in the Wairarapa at the time, I believe, because
I remember there was 1 month we did some crazy number of people sent to roles, like well more than 100 in 1 month, which was
so that's how we are, I guess, judged from a Charities Commission perspective, and the review. How many new volunteers do you bring in, and how many new organisations do you bring in? Obviously that's less now because we've got most of them, obviously, but how many connections you make between the volunteer and the organisation? So you are judged on those figures, and I did, in my IT background, I did have became a salesperson, and so I guess I was very much trained on numbers. So that kind of is quite important to me. So that was, I think, a success. And I think if you sort of talk about success, I think that there's so many little successes, and a lot of those little successes are people who come into our centre clearly with challenged mental health. And so you can tell. They don't necessarily say it, but you can absolutely feel. And you probably connect them, and one would probably talk to the organisation and say, look, for us, they feel quite vulnerable. And so these organisations look after them. And it's incredible how one's mental health can be heightened by being able to go out there and help someone in the world, which is fantastic. So we've seen a lot of those stories. Those stories obviously no one knows about, but volunteering does help to lift a lot of people into a much better space. And younger people, I guess, for employment, and I guess older people, I guess it's more that they can start to give back again to the world, where they've been very much tied into a job. And they can obviously, retirement can be lonely for some people. They can obviously get out in the community and connect.
What a lovely story about Joseph. And
it was an amazing story.
And like you say, I mean, volunteering is good for mental health when when you're looking for a job and it's quite stressful. That's a stressful time. Other people who, they don't know where to start, or other reasons, and like you say, it does uplift you. Just the fact that you're connecting with people and you're doing something purposeful is
absolutely
just good for the well-being.
And I forgot to mention, for the youth, putting it on their CVs is amazing.
Absolutely.
Because if you see something that they've done something, then an employer, particularly their first employment opportunity, so I would thoroughly encourage all young people to try and do something.
Yes, yeah. Right, well, let's have another music break.
On a morning from a Bogart movie, in a country where they turn back time, you go strolling through the crowd like Peter Laura contemplating a crime. She comes out of the sun in a silk dress, running like a watercolor in the rain. Don't bother asking for explanation, she'll just tell you that she came in the year of the cat. She doesn't give you time for questions as she locks up your arm in hers, and you follow till your sense of which direction completely disappears. By the blue tiled walls near the market stalls, there's a hidden door she leads you to. These days, she says, I feel my life just like a river running through the year of the cat. She looks at you so coolly, and her eyes shine like the moon in the sea. She comes in incense and patchouli, so you take her the cat. Still with her on the bus and the tourists are gone, and you've thrown away your choice and lost your ticket, so you have to stay on. But the drumbeat strains of the night remain, and the rhythm of the newborn day. You know sometime you're bound to leave her, but for now you're gonna stay in the year of the cat. Year of the cat.
So that was lovely music from Al Stewart, Year of the Cat. So that's another one you
of
brought
my
in.
favourites.
Yes. Donna, so is that again a memory of you?
Of my, I guess London, I was in my late 20s. It was an awesome time to be around. It was the late 80s at that point in time in terms of, and it was, I guess it reminds me of that wonderful independence that I had and success, I guess, in my career at that point in time. So for me, it brings back great memories.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so with volunteering Wairarapa, would you find that you have any challenges?
Many challenges.
Okay.
And I've jotted a few down on my paper.
Challenges are opportunities, right?
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'm going to cover the biggest challenge, which every single person in this country and world, probably internationally, and organisations are finding, and that's the challenge of COVID. So I believe that it will change the face of volunteering. I'm not too sure quite how, but last week we had our national hui, our national like an AGM and a kind of a hui with a whole lot of things have happened last week, wasn't it? Last week or two?
Yeah, it was for the Volunteer Centres Network Aotearoa VCNA. There's 17 volunteer centres in New Zealand, and we're part of. That's our organisational name. So we have online meetings regularly throughout the year. Actually, that's something good that's come out of COVID. But we had our hui where everybody turns up and discusses what we have been experiencing over the year.
And there are a lot of challenges throughout New Zealand. So, I think, yes, the world is shaking up and every organisation is probably in shake-up. So I'm going to suspect that in a year or two, when things sort of become a little bit more defined, then I think we'll be actually better off, and I think that more people will be wanting to volunteer. That's my feeling. On a maybe a more ad hoc basis rather than the traditional volunteering basis, which is you do a role at say at the Salvation Army shop, for instance, for half a day every Monday and Wednesday. We still need those people, don't get me wrong, but I think there'll be a lot more people who will just be quite happy to get an alert either via social media or an email or whatever to just go and help out for a good cause. So I think that's kind of going to be a little bit better. So that's the main challenge, but that's a challenge for everyone. So going back from that, I've just written down a few things. I think for the volunteering centres, and as Donna mentioned, there are 17 of these in the country, we all have systems. Now, when volunteer centres started, which was around about 25, 30 years ago, it was all on paper, on little filing cards, and generally speaking, the people like Donna, who are the administrators, have to remember what organisations and what roles, and it was very much the way things used to happen in those days. Well, now we've got databases. They're called volunteer systems, management systems. Volunteer systems?
I just
VSM
call them
systems.
volunteer management systems.
Yep, that sounds right. VMS, yep, volunteer standard management systems. And so there are a number of these, and that's one of our challenges currently for the Wairarapa, because we used to have one which was very simplistic, and as you can see, it rolled around many, many different volunteers. It was so simple to use that we trained up people to use it, and we had these facilitators. We've now since moved to another platform called Be Collective, which is more of a community-wide type of system. Not sure quite whether that's relevant actually for the Wairarapa. So it's now, but since I obviously joined 2017, so that's like 4 years ago, so things have changed. There's always change. I would love it if there was a national centralised solution for volunteer centres. That would be my goal, and I think that would be a lot of people's goals. And so that's a challenge. So watch this space. And I think, again, just to round off this situation, both Donna and I have experienced personal circumstances over the last couple of years. Both of us have lost our mothers to, my mother was very lucky. She lived till 99. Donna's mother, not so lucky. She was in her mid-60s when she died of cancer earlier this year. And that's been very tough on Donna. And as I discovered, I lost my mother, and the grief I experienced from that was huge. So I actually took a year off last year, and Donna held the volunteering centre together. So I was called back middle of this year to come in and join up with Donna again, which I did, and off we go together. Yep. So I think we're getting through that challenge, both of us, both from a personal perspective and also for an organisational perspective.
Yeah, I guess together you can also give each other support and keep the thing going, which we said it helps with, any mental strain that we may experience. So I hope it does that for you too. Thank you so much, Jill and Donna, for being here and sharing, both what you're doing at work, but also some of your personal experiences. It's really valuable to know that, what we all humans, and we all have lives and difficulties, and we go through them and the best we can. So thank you so much for coming today. Volunteering Wairarapa is a lovely organisation if you want to get some volunteer work going, and they will help you find what's right for you. They are based on Perry Street in Masterton at the community centre, so please go in there. You can find them also online on the website, or they've also got a Facebook page, so feel free to go and check that out. So thank you for listening to Inspirational Communities today. Thank you, Michael, and the team at RFM for having us today. Feel free to comment on our Facebook page and contact me as well to be part of the show. So you can contact me via RFM or via the Wairarapa Women's Centre, which is where I work. Thank you so much, and see you next time, which will be next month. And for now, I would say believe in yourself, and which is Mauria Te Pono. Thank you. Bye-bye.